Tonight we have a couple of things happening. We have some scholars from the campus who are going to talk about their work very briefly, just so you can hear a little bit about the kinds of initiatives and things that are happening. We have Dr. Heidi Hart, who's an assistant professor in the political science department here at UC Irvine. We also have Dr. Constance Elo, who's a chancellor's postdoctoral scholar and a rising assistant professor in the education department, who will be speaking to us. And then after that, the person that you have been waiting for, Natalia Molebatsi, will be introduced by our research librarian, Pauline Manaka, and Ryan Davis, one of the alums of illustrious, marvelous, wonderful alums of our African American Studies and Political Science departments here.
Great. So just to let you know a little bit about who I am and some of the work that I'm doing right now with my research. As we just heard, my name is Dr. Heidi Hart. I'm a relatively new professor in the political science department. And the research that I work on is at the intersection of three different areas. So international organizations, which are like the United Nations, NATO, the European Union, peace and conflict, and gender. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about two projects that I have going on, both gender related, but they each have a component that has to do with intersectionality. So if we have a chance to speak one-on-one later, I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Both of these are funded projects. They're ongoing. They're going to be out the door hopefully very soon. So I'm really appreciative of your thoughts and your feedback. So the first project that I'm working on is called Diversity in Graduate Training. And this particular project is trying to understand the representation of gender in graduate students' training, so specifically PhD students, and trying to understand how is it that syllabi look the way they do, why is it? Why do comprehensive exams? So for some of us who are less familiar with a comprehensive exam reading list, that's basically when you're a PhD student, in order to kind of advance as a PhD student, typically you have to read a huge number of books and scholarly articles. So what my co-author, her name is Amy Erica Smith, she's also a political science professor at Iowa State University, we're both trying to understand why do these things look the way they do. And we think that that matters for several reasons. One, because the students and the types of knowledge that we're sharing with them is then going to go on and shape the world in many different ways. One of the ways is that when we convey in these syllabi, these are the people that matter, right? These are the scholars, and this is the type of research that matters. We're effectively sending a signal that this is the type of work that you should be striving to achieve, right, in your own work. And that then you should go out and when you become professors, this is the type of work that you should be reflecting back on. Now, what does this have to do with gender? What does this have to do with race and ethnicity? Even though the text of these documents, right, whether you're sitting in a classroom as a PhD student and you receive a syllabi of what you're supposed to read, or whether you're a PhD student who's trying to move ahead and hopefully go on and become a professor one day yourself, right, and you're confronted with this list. This is a black and white list ultimately, it's just a bunch of text. But at the end of the day, the text is reflecting back people, right? And those are people who have value. And right now, there has been a huge amount of literature that has been showing us that there's a big gap in terms of who's actually being reflected in these documents and who's not. And you might not be that surprised about what that type of person looks like when we think about the people, and if you were to click through to the links and go to the websites of the people that are reflected in those documents, those are typically white men, right? So what we do know, like I was just saying, is that there is this building body of scholarship that has, for better or worse, focused a lot on the gender component, right? Has focused on the fact that publications, citation counts, not just in political science, even though I'm a political scientist, we know that this is true in business schools. We know this is true in medicine. Maybe you're training to become a doctor and you have to read certain research that's been produced on cardiovascular disease, right? Typically, who are the people that are getting cited in those publications? And we know that, in academia more broadly, publications are what matters, right? So many of us who are in this ivory tower, right, we hear that, that it's publish or perish, right? But again, the problem is, and this is what we're really concerned about in this project, is that if the signal that you're getting as a graduate student is that who matters is not you, right, as an underrepresented graduate student, then how are you supposed to then go on and publish things yourselves, create your own syllabi, teach other students, if you're being sent this kind of subtle signal that no, you as a scholar, you don't matter as much as these other people do, right? So this is why we really do think that graduate training more broadly matters. And I think it speaks back to what we heard in the introduction, which is, why do departments look the way they do, right? When you scroll through the website of faculty, right? Well, part of that process of hiring, so for example, I'm on a search committee right now, involves, going through and looking at what have they published and where have they published. And this is another thing. We know that some of the top journals, and this is across fields, again, not just in political science, are also significantly underrepresenting females and significantly underrepresenting ethnic minorities, right? But particularly, not just ethnic minorities, particularly African Americans. So as part of this project, what we're doing is we've received a grant thanks to APSA. I know that APSA's, I think the Women's Caucus is one of the ones sponsoring this, this event right now. They are helping us pay for research assistants. We're going to go out and try to collect. Oh, wow. Okay, so maybe I'll just talk about this first project. That's fine. I'll tell you about the other project if you're interested. A little bit one-on-one. But anyways, we're going to be collecting this mass amount of syllabi. We're sending out a survey to all APSA. APSA is the American Political Science Association. All faculty to try to get a sense of what do these syllabi look like, and then what are the factors that are leading to the underrepresentation. So we have a couple hypotheses about what some of those reasons may be. Like, for example, we're expecting the junior faculty, someone such as myself who's a little bit younger, who maybe has been already exposed to diversity in all sorts of different ways and at an earlier stage than some of the more senior faculty, that we maybe cite women and that we cite ethnic minorities more than, say, senior faculty. It might also be that if you yourself, as an author of one of these syllabi, you yourself are from an underrepresented group, then you might do the same thing. So this is one of the projects. The other project has to do with gender mainstreaming at NATO, which is the world's largest military organization. A separate co-author and I have been hired to effectively train all incoming military and civilian staff in not just gender issues, but diversity training in general. So any advice that you have, it's kind of a big project, but like I said, I'm happy to talk to people afterwards. Any advice you have on that entire training that we were supposed to be doing would be much appreciated. So thank you again for inviting me here to talk a little bit about my work.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. My colleagues around campus know that I'm always asking people to show up and be on a panel or something like that because it's lonely in humanities and they have more money in the social sciences and the professional schools. Yeah, anyway, that's not the only reason, but please join me in welcoming Dr. Constance Elo.
Thank you. Oh, do I just snip this, little thing?
You just snip it any place and they need it for the phone.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Hello, everyone. So two things. One, I can't sing like Tiffany, so please don't expect me breaking out into song at any point during this. It actually would be pretty terrible for you all. You said dance? Okay, not that either. But so that's the first thing. And the second thing, when I was sitting over there, I was sitting next to a lady that was asking me about an art history lecture, and she eventually left, and she said, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. And the funny thing was, as soon as I walked inside here, I knew I was supposed to be here. And even in being at UCI, even though this campus wasn't created with a me in mind, I knew I was supposed to be here. So I'm so grateful for this opportunity from Tiffany and just to talk to you all. I'm actually the first Black tenure track professor in the School of Education at UC Irvine. So, thank you. And oddly enough, my research addresses higher education. So most of the students that look like me actually don't go to colleges like UCI or UCLA or UCs in general. Actually, more Black students are enrolled in for-profit colleges like University of Phoenix and DeVry than the UC and CSU system combined here in the state of California. So that's just to problematize the state of higher education that we're in. A lot of the communities I care about aren't actually at the institution to which I work. So my work broadly addresses college access and equity, educational stratification, particularly for low-income students, students of color, and post-traditional students, and then also the spaces of higher learning that we call community colleges and for-profit colleges. So a lot of how I arrived at my work was really just thinking about my own community. People like my sister, people like my mom, that a lot of these higher education spaces were not built for. Well, where do they end up going to college? Places like community college, for-profit institutions, and that led me to this question of why. So I actually went to business school before I did my PhD in education, and I ask a lot of consumer behavior related questions because I'm really interested. Well, why do underserved niche communities end up where they end up in the higher education landscape? So one of the projects I'm working on, which is actually a book with Johns Hopkins University Press, is looking at for-profit college going amongst the most underserved in higher education and really kind of bringing to life what I would call these narratives that are basically hidden in plain sight. These are people that we see every day, but no one has taken the time to ask, why did you end up at this institution? What happened along the way? So there's a lot of rich narratives, a lot of dynamic and disturbing problems that are highlighted in the book as it relates to why they're at for-profit institutions or why they're not represented at places like UC Irvine. Another project is a grant it's a grant funded project. I'm looking at virtual learning in vocational higher education. And I really want to problematize the way we fetishize innovation. A lot of times we thrust, take these online classes or, to get more access, we can put more communities of color, in online education. Well, is that what they really want? Is that what they really need? This project is really to get at from their experiences, what does that look like for you? What does that mean for you? Is this really what you want? And is the literature that is out there that in a lot of ways glamorizes innovation like that totally distant and separate from the realities that the people to which, that have to take these courses really live and are challenged with. And I think I had another project I wanted to tell you guys about. What was it? Oh, so I just published an ethnography in the American Educational Research Journal, which is one of the top tier education journals. And if you guys could cite it, or I don't know, who can, We just heard from my colleague, citations matter, Black Lives Matter. But again, I spent 7 months inside a for-profit institution, and it was really illuminating what I found as it relates to, these are regular students. They want to know what's going on with their education also. They don't want their ticket punched. They want an education. And I think a lot of times, those students that are the most underserved continue to be underserved throughout higher education. So my work really centers at the point of disrupting that and problematizing those dynamics. So if you guys have any thoughts or questions or want to pass along a PDF or to a colleague, that's totally cool. But I just wanted to give you that overview, and it's just such a beautiful moment for me to be here. I literally just left a space where I was the only one that looked like me to be here, where I'm surrounded by all these beautiful faces. So thank you for the pleasure and the privilege. Thank you.
At each of the kind of meal times, I'm trying to feature some of the scholars on our campus. So there's, there'll be a speaker at the lunch and speakers at the breakfast. And so just so you get a chance to know the folks who are here. We have an incredible, fantastic, marvelous keynote speaker who's going to be talking to us in a little while, and I wanted to set up the work that she does a little bit by inviting two colleagues to talk about her. The first person to talk about Natalia Molebatsi will be Pauline Manaka, who's a research librarian here on campus, herself South African. When she came to the United States years ago, she continued to do like most South Africans who were traveling around the world in the 80s and 90s, which was to let people know about apartheid and to move the movement forward, to extend the movement, to push the movement, to make the movement grow. And she did that as well as being the kind of librarian at multiple campuses, but here really where she made the bulk of her career, that could talk to you about this important political phenomena of the anti-apartheid struggle on one hand, but also would be kind enough to walk you through learning how to become a researcher, right? And could treat your project, whatever your kind of small question might be as an undergraduate student, as something that had a life and had legs and that had potential and promise. And I've seen her work, particularly with undergraduate students in gender and sexuality studies here. This is really a lot of where the education happens, right? It's people teaching, right? So please join me in welcoming Pauline Manaka.
Ladies and gentlemen, I came here. Can you hear me? Should I dance?
No dancing.
No, I came to this conference today because of her. Okay? And I have to say, please, everyone in the house, we need to be grateful Tiffany is on this campus. And I am most grateful that she found Natalia, because I have never met Natalia, but from the work that Natalia published, one of the books, We Are, is how I'm going to introduce her. I think everyone is going to get a copy, no?
Yes.
Okay.
The faculty presenters are getting a copy.
Yeah.
The graduate students, I apologize to you. They have so many copies at the bookstore. Natalia brought copies with her. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I did that. I'm sorry. I know. Trying to not be, hierarchical. I'm sorry.
So my role here today is to work with Ryan to introduce Natalia to you. And what I decided, since I did not interview her, was to dig around and see who she really is. And I did find out some things. Please forgive me. I have titled this little presentation, Today, Her Silence is Louder with Poetry, Dance, a Conversation with Natalia Molebatsi. That's how I say her name. She was born in Tembisa. Those of you who know Soweto know Tembisa. Tembisa is one of those districts around Joburg, Johannesburg, that were established after apartheid to segregate residential living of blacks and whites. That doesn't exist anymore, we know. Currently, Natalia works at the University of South Africa Library. She is an archivist. She is a poet. She is an author. She is also an organizer of amazing workshops to educate you, me, globally. She has been to Italy, she has been to Europe, she has been to Africa to educate people about the developments in South Africa using art, her art. She's a collaborator. She moves around the world, meets a lot of people, and knows how to work to continue taking the message forward of our education. So we at UCI today are very graced to have Natalia come talk to us. As I said, if I repeat myself, it's because I'm very excited. In the 1980s, those of you who know South Africa, in the 1990s, and even forward, Natalia and a group of other people, other poets, other artists, were continuing to use performance and art to send the message forward. In the 1990s, it actually started to rise up because those of you remember in 1994, South Africans came together and decided to kill apartheid non-violently under the leadership of Mandela. Natalia and them, consequently, in this little booklet and other publications, are raising questions that after 22 years, I'm gonna have to read this. After 22 years of post-apartheid, South Africa seems to be failing to build the culture of human rights, accountability, and transparency in government that was promised. One thing that I will tell the two of you, I am trained as a political scientist, and I studied in Atlanta. At Atlanta University. And my professor should be here, right? Is one of the speakers. Yeah, AU, baby. So you know that my experience for 10 years in Atlanta, I was a librarian as well. I worked at Georgia State. I trained at Atlanta University. So when I came to the UC Irvine, the only lucky thing I had is that I worked with the Department of Anthropology. Some cool people in anthropology, especially the ones I worked with. So Natalia, you guys, so the language I'm using here is just to remind us that the poems are also looking at the plights of women, children, the poverty situation, miseducation and unemployment, illiteracy, health issues, and which are stagnant or increasing. So some of the poems in here, for instance, have been carefully selected to cover certain themes based on her knowledge as a historian, as someone that is determined to archive South Africa's future, and someone that wants to speak about people or encourage writing and publishing from the academia as well as grassroots. So you can relate to a person like that, and she performs her work. Okay, and I'm looking forward to meeting this lady. I haven't even met her. But one thing I realized, she uses the people's philosophy, we call it Ubuntu, which is a belief that one in Sesotho is mutu ke mutu ka batho ba bang. In other words, one is a person through others. That is something that those of us who tried the Black Power movement called Black Consciousness in South Africa actually were very adamant about and had serious problems with the negotiation process at some point. But we have grown beyond that. So bringing together authors like Makumela Manaka. Can you guess? My last name is Manaka. That's a nephew who himself writes about, it's a guy, but his focus is on the rate of crime, unemployment, the exploitation of women, the rate of teen pregnancies, violence, against and sexual abuses, sexism, and circumcision. That's Matsimela, one of his poems in here. I'm not going to read it. But another poet like Sabata Mukai, who is looking at the high rate of crime and unemployment and raises some core questions, which Natalia herself in a poem called Lotion Blues points to the unaddressed hopes for land reforms, which is at the base of what we're still talking about today. Tomorrow at my presentation, from that angle of politics, is one of the things I'm looking at, you know, some of the problems that are still continuing with land reforms. It points to the unaddressed hopes for land reforms, which are still central to the people's expectations. The inequality, migration and immigration, if you know, there's lots of that. And she addresses that with some other folks, and I'm going to quickly skip to say that the high crime rate and the evolution of an outgroup in South Africa, which violates human rights horridly, Natalia and them continue to say, yes, it's heavy in some of the poems here. However, we are addressing it, and it is getting better. And in that case, I should quickly say one little poem that is called Perspective, and I'm going to read just a little bit. And that poem is trying to say the future is possible. And Perspective is written by Ndovu. Her name is Malika, and I think they've done other poems together. And the final thing that Malika says is, my path is a river meeting others, then winding its own unpredictable way in currents, carries me back and forth between blindness and vision, seems certain of our return to the ocean, where someday I know liberation from these boulders and banks experience the promise of freedom fulfilled. So while they are raising these issues, and like in another book where they were talking to the leadership, the letter to South Africa, Poets Calling to the State, one of the authors was saying, they were sort of basing it, those of you who know poetry, on the lines of Allen Ginsberg's poem, America. I don't know it. But they were saying something like, South Africa, hey, I'm talking to you. It's like praying, it's like mourning, like whimpering to, I want to build your strip club of truth, your peep show of reconciliation. Shove sweaty 20 rand notes in the G-string of your history. You have us addicted to your verbal caffeine. What, Mr. President, is that how you choose to use your freedom machine? And it's this got translated in several languages. She was one of the authors in these 31 key poetry collection of poets, key poet collections of poetry. And I just want to raise a few things of, in addition to writing We Are, and she just wrote a book right before she came here. I'm sure Ryan is going to say some of that because they have met. But she got awarded in 2016 at the university for, they were doing the program of International Mother Language Day, where they tried to help with education. And then she got one of the other awards in 2015 as significant achievement. What happened is the university UNISA, University of South Africa Library, was trying to raise the number of women workers higher and higher, and one of the way was to provide achievement, and of significant worker or significant achiever, and she was one of them. And then another thing that I really like, working with the World Book Day, she organized with others a trip to some rural places where the theme was Be Smart, Read Books, to endorse the library information, endorsed by the library, LIASA, which is the Library Information Association of South Africa. But they were trying to nurture reading, and the rural areas, as you know, that's where things are needed. I'm not gonna go through the other things because we can find time to talk about it. But I am very proud as a librarian to introduce a colleague, a friend, but someone that's an intellectual and goes beyond that, that's an activist, and goes beyond that, that's an artist, because in 1990, many of what these people do helped to enlighten people in the 1990s, to enlighten people, but it also translated into the area of filmmaking. People were now becoming aware of those active messages in filmmaking. Thank you, and it's a pleasure to have a sister like you.
All right, good evening, guys. Good evening. Good evening. I am so happy to be here. I wanted to first start by thanking Dr. Tiffany Willoughby-Herrard for inviting me back to UCI to speak. I think throughout my years here at UCI and post-UCI, I gathered this collection of books that are like sitting around my house, and I go back to them and I reread them often, but I don't get a chance to talk about them with people. So I'm really excited to be able to come back and talk about a book that has been so influential to me since being here at UC Irvine, and a book that I continuously go back to. So I'm just gonna jump into it. I was introduced to the poetry anthology We Are during the winter of 2011. It was a piercing book of a creative and political world among a syllabus of theory, political science, ethnography, and anthropology. Now that is just a quick advertisement for Dr. Willoughby-Herrard's course in African feminisms. For any undergrad that's sitting in the room, please take it. You can cite her course in any of your work that you do. It was a great way for me to open my eyes diasporically, which is never a bad thing. But We Are came to me at a time when not only was I forming and solidifying a certain political and creative stand, but I was figuring out how to move and be in my world, essentially. I was preparing to leave Irvine and venture to a new space, leave the circle of friends, political comrades, mentors, and fellow creatives I had bonded with over the course of 5 years. We Are came as a glimpse during that winter, a glimpse of a world outside, yet so intimately interconnected to my own world, my view, and my words as a writer. Natalia Molebatsi compiled a voice, not singular, but a masterfully encompassing voice that gave sound and rhythm to spirits and thoughts rising from South Africa and opening my Southern California eyes of ways of connecting and ways of thinking about this notion of collective. I moved from Irvine to Chicago and then to Minneapolis, and now I'm back in Southern California living in Los Angeles. In every place I've been, I've actively sought out this idea of a collective. Connecting my voice to that collective is what made my surroundings, wherever I was, feel familiar for me. For me, that was particularly Black, particularly queer, and particularly creative. This notion of we are, we be, we is what I pondered. What does it mean for me to think through the world connectedly to a Black queer point of view? To seek out a group of friends, support, and guidance based on an intimate meditation on the stuff that defines me and in turn defines my group or my tribe. Natalia's work in compiling voices is what pushed me to think through the collective. Her work was a type of roadmap for me as I traveled. This book pushed me to question, how do I ground myself in a particular place and lend my energy to the created, implied, and/or shared community? There's a particular line in her poem, We Are. We are remembered members of dismembered bonds. I'll say it one more time. We are remembered members of dismembered bonds. In reflecting now on this notion of a collective, the bonds either created or implied that I belong to, a group of people who don't necessarily think the same, but ponder the same problems or meditate within the same issues. Natalia opened a space for me to reflect on the energy of the we, the ability for the we to be regenerative, to be a shelter, to be a space, and to be a place. Natalia starts her 2014 album with the work, Do Not Forget, and the opening line, do not forget to co and inter-exist in your existence. Thank you, Natalia, for being that inspiration for me. And thank you, Dr. Willoughby Hervard, for not only introducing me to, but inviting me to think about my co and inter-existence. Thank you.
All right, I saw some really important people walk in. I saw Nicole Mitchell and I saw Calvin Gant, who interviewed Natalia. Calvin, can you just kind of wave your hand? So last week on KUCI, I'm sure it's archived by now, so that you can actually get a chance. I saw Dr. Shelby Lewis come in, and there's just no way to not try to have a conversation about the politics of African women without talking about Shelby Lewis. Those of you who are not Black women political scientists have maybe not had the opportunity to get to know this scholar, but let me tell you something. Whatever it is you're thinking you're doing about transnational feminism, or about African gender studies, or about women in the world, you're not doing it if you don't know Shelby Lewis's work. And there's no way to kind of move forward without naming these great people. When we started about 45 minutes ago, I listed off all the names of the people who sponsored financially. But let me tell you, the people who really, really, really sponsored this thing, and I neglected to mention the Association for the Study of Black Women in Politics. This is our first conference of this association. It's been around since the early 2000s. This is our very, 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 very first meeting. And what a big thing. And how many people's dreams and hopes are coming into the room together. I don't want to take much more time because I know you all are waiting to hear from Natalia Molebatsi. But please just join me. We're going to give her a really resounding applause. And please just join me in welcoming Natalia.
Hello. Traveler, warrior, journey people. Hello. Hello. Welcome to these pages. These are the stages on our journey, so hello. Hello. Goodbye. I will meet you at the corners. I will find you at the fringes. I will see you at the center of our forming. So hello, traveler, warrior, troubled man, but trying. Warrior, journey woman, tired, but trying. Into the limitless skies in pursuit of roots and truth. Traveler, warrior, journey people, what are your foundations? Hey, journey woman, what are your formulations? Because I too, I am searching for my formulations. I am searching for my formations. And if any of you, traveler, warrior, journey woman, ever get to that other side, tell them that we were made of flesh and blues. Tell them that we were crafted into flesh and long tapestries who hold us up when we can't uphold ourselves. Tell them that we were made of flesh and love. So hello, traveler, warrior, journey people. Hello! Can you hear me well in the microphone? And yeah, you guys are beautiful. You look like people from everywhere I've been. Yeah? And you look like people from where I'm still going. Are you here? Yes. When you say, are you here? It's got nothing to do with you. It's in your flesh. It's got everything to do with is your heart, is your spirit. Are you here? Yes. I am surprised that you are still stretched out here. Urban planters and dreamers at the outskirts of incomplete promises. Urban planters and dreamers at the outcry of inconsistent promises. Earthquake-like fury and fires and floods that seem to rest only at ease on the summer land of someone's flesh. Your flesh, Haiti. Your flesh, Wakiti. Your flesh, tutuzeka wena onzakaleyo. Your flesh, tutuzeka wena othembisiweyo. Always the promised. Always the promised. Always, always, and always the promised. That poem was actually about Haiti, but it's about all of us as Black people and as human beings. My favorite poet, Jane Cortez, said Haiti got what we call punishment punch for rebelling. And I don't even think, we use the words rebel. It's your revolution. It's like, it's just normal to say, no, I'm not going to be treated this way. Therefore, I am going to murder you for treating me horribly. And when you're a slave, it's like, what? I am going to murder myself out of this. It is such a powerful, unexpected way of being because you're colonized. You're not supposed to speak up. You're not supposed, and speaking equals murder. That's why the languaging of it, I'm going to speak myself out of this. What, you trying to kill the empire? What? So ever since then, Haiti has been drinking the punishment punch, if you know that story. And it was a great example for all of us at home, in the empire, in the diaspora, to say, actually, we can fight our way out of this. We can speak our way out of this. Even though your words mean you could end up in jail, your thoughts could kill you. Like, you can end up in a grave for speaking up. So when I speak my words, I speak about the wounded, my people in Tembisa and in Soweto, but these thoughts and words are not far away from my thoughts of my people in Haiti, my people at the bottom of the ocean, for example. So, yes, I am here. I'm not sure if the world is big or small, but I traveled for 30 hours. But I also want to thank Professor Willoughby Herod for you inviting me. You and your team. I wasn't expecting this, but I think you're going to make me take my work even more serious. Yes. So, yeah, I really, really appreciate that. So, wow. Every day, this day, today, that day is your day. So good morning and welcome to the morning of new meaning. When chapter come open, chapter come close to the edge where we carve a center, some place to begin from. Every day we are coming out of some little place behind the face of smiling hatred, going into spaces known as everywhere, We are at the front lines. We are at the front lines. And there we tend to lean towards the candlelit heads of mountain-like knowings of women who will ask you, where do you receive your gifts and how do you give it back? Someone will ask you for droplets of your dreams. Someone will ask you, where do you receive your gifts and how do you give it back? Somewhere, half past history, on the other side of how far we have come, on the other side of the mountain known as language, someone will ask you for droplets of your dream. And really, some of these poems, they border on hello. Hello? Hello. Because hello has become the universal way of greeting one another, right? I mean, even like, hello, you know what the person is talking about, whether you can speak English or not. And the signifier for that hello is that I see you, I don't know your name, but I note you on our journey as human beings. So a lot of the poems that I write are also, you know, it might not mean much, but we are here on this journey together. So, hello. This talk is also around the silences being louder, and I'd like to ask you to allow me to read. I want to do something in my language, man. Yes. You know, I always come with a schedule. Prof, I always come with a schedule. And then it just melts in front of me. As soon as I get there, I just look at the people and I think I want to say something in Sepedi. And I am so happy that Pauline Manaka is here and she's going to be your ears. Okay. And for those who do not understand my language, please understand it through your heart, understand it through the skin. And if you do meet Paulina in the campus somewhere,
They can come to the library.
she will explain. Yes. You see, this is a campaign. This is a library campaign. You want to understand this particular poem? Go to the library. Rakina chelete goba wona motoro rakina motse wa mabai fela kina le wena andinayo into yokuthenga okanye imoto andinazi impahla ezinhle kodwa ndinawe akinatsela tsebo yona ga ke tsebe fela ke tseba wena seikokotlelo sa ditšhiwana e re wena o thomišitše tema le kgono mešomo ya gagwe go eteletše pele ke sena mangwe 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 fela ke na le wena ke sena mang fela ke na le wena seikokotlelo sa ditšhiwana na e re lefase le hlaba ka meutlwa ya mahlabi-hlabi ke tsoše wena seikokotlelo sa ditšhiwana o thomišitše tema o tšweletše ka dithabeng wa tšhelela dinokana di a tšhelela mawatle-watle ke re nna ga ke na mangwe fela ke na le wena wa mathomo-thomo Le mafelelo, felelo. Wena wa mathomo, thomo. Le mafelelo. Pauline is going to explain at the library. Should I just tell them a little bit about the poem then?
While you were talking about money, you
That's not true. I was just saying that there's a way of speaking. You know, we speak in tongues and in proverbs. Just saying that I might not have $1. Yes, it's true, it's funny. But I have you. You know, this at least where I come from, my grandmother would always say, I don't have anything, but I have you guys. You are my eyes, you're my vision, and you can hold me, you know, like as a walking stick. And that's more important than the money.
Forget about the BMW.
Okay, I said that I don't have money, I don't have a car, I don't have anything, nice furniture, I don't have nice clothes, but I've got you. You know, if you had to choose between those kind of things, you would choose that person. And that is true, because I would choose my mother 10 million times over. I don't care about those things. I've got my mother. So I'd like to read from this poetry collection that is called, English is not my mother tongue. This is the excuse and the explanation we always give to the people that English is not my home language, so I'm going to speak it any way that I want. I am going to just speak it the way, you know? Because sometimes we tend to forget, even back home, we tend to forget that there are other languages that are just as equally important and beautiful and worthy to be learned and loved.
Yeah.
So yeah, if there's a language on campus that you can take up, I would suggest you take up Swahili. Because true, Manjeri, true. I would hope, because of the formation of the language, it is a Nguni language that really embraces a lot of Eastern right down to the south of Africa. It is one of the languages that we've got many languages, but it's very representative, this language. So now I am looking for a poem. Should have put those stickers in there, but it's fine, I know you forgive. So the theme of my talk is around the silence being louder, right? So when you say hello to somebody, you have not said anything, right? But you have said something, you've voiced something that is so important. So it's just playing around those silences and saying, even silence can be louder. But this particular poem was really inspired by the work of Ntabiseng Mutseme, Dr. Ntabiseng Mutseme, who was interpreting and interrogating the issues around South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where after apartheid that we had in South Africa for so long, we were now supposed to sit victim with perpetrator and try and talk it out. Yeah, so I'll just leave it right there. The mute also speak. And whenever language is not enough to silence the sirens of oppression, we resist through how we still persist on homes who refuse to end. So that whenever talk is snatched from our lips or hips, silence also pours a hush, hush, but understood tone into the hearty crossroads of prayers that we travel and gestures that we mix, and breathing that is carved higher than any horror that wills to murder a people's history, because today, today. Silence is louder than taking itself to the grave. It is unsealed, like the ones who gave names to the song of this very day. Dance is also a particular language, right? So, and you know, as Africans, or at least as the Zulus, when tourists come to the country, they're like, how do you guys dance? And they ask the little kids, please show us. And they snap their pictures, show us, you know, we want to see how you guys dance. So I did exactly that when I went to Europe. I asked the people, how do you dance? You know? That's what I learned. That's what tourists do, so I'm going to And so I asked this woman, she's in a village, and the kind of program that I was allowed us to stay with people in, you know, people's homes, not a traditional bed and breakfast or hotel, you know. And I liked that because it meant the community would make some kind of transaction, you know, with the program. So I was staying with Silvana. Like, Silvana, dance, man. Show me how you guys do this thing. This is in Sardinia, an island in Italy. I'm like, okay, please, just. And this is Silvana's response. And Silvana's response just connected me to the fact that we are both women, as much as she's 30 or 40 years older than me, and she's a European, she's a white woman, but her response just connected me to every woman I have met and never met. Ballo sardo, sardo dance. I asked her to chide the moon with the ballo sardo. I asked her to chide the moon with the ballo sardo on the marble floors of her endurance. With a wrinkled smile, softer than the murmurs of time, she began. She said, child, I have never danced in my entire slice of life. My father would never let a woman loose in his home. So I watched my brothers tap on the tips of histories who tangle with futures I never could peruse. And they did it well, she sighs with a smile the size of the sun. But I wonder though, if Silvana ever rode in dream-soaked roads inside the heart, unspun grace like a soul-trained diva, shaking the load off at the feet of her desire not to be hidden nor forbidden by the nakedness of the truth she holds. I never told that her body's ways remind all around of a blue song sway. So because I have dissolved the schedule, I'm going to stand here and say poems all night. Somebody Somebody's gonna have to show me a T somewhere from the back there, because otherwise you're in trouble. I'll do a few poems. I also write, so as I'm going through the poems, I think you are getting a sense of the kind of things that I write about, to make the silence a little bit lighter, to make the silence a little bit audible, those kind of things, you know. And you can ask questions. This is that kind of session. You want to ask a question, just raise your hand and ask the question. How nice is that? That's very generous, I think. Hey, music man. Hey, creator, crafter man. Promise. Promise you will live a very long time. Promise. And if you die one day, creator, man, music, crafter man, when you die one day, like every natural being does, season in and season out, promise. Promise that your fingers will return as butterflies. Promise. Promise, music man, that your fingers will return as a time of water for the people. And when you die one day, like all natural beings do, season in and season out, music man, I will cry for you, I will dance for you, I will say, you made my life. Where I come from, words and song live in the same river, in the same ocean, and they just melt in the same pot. I'm telling you, even when your grandmother would be shouting at you, at some point, as she's just telling you and talking to you how wrong you are, at some point, it starts being like she's singing. You know, the language is intertwined with songs, so that is why I'm not a singer, but I end up singing the words because that's what happens. I mean, I even got reprimanded in song, like, I have to do this. You know, my mentor, Professor Molebatsi, speaks very much about this because also, let me just clarify something. In my language, we don't have she and he. It's all. So sometimes I'll be saying she for man. It's not disrespectful. It's just that I think in my language and then I have to speak in Sesotho. So Professor Molebatsi had a relationship with jazz and with jazz musicians that was so fluid between poetry and jazz, and that is why today we have something called jazz poetry, because Nicole, you want us to show them how this situation happens? Nicole, come on! Yeah! so you better be I just met Nicole this afternoon. But me and her have known each other in another world. Because don't be fooled and think this is like the only world. There's so many of these worlds, and we've met each other there. So me and you will just demonstrate what I've just been talking about. So you just play and I'll just talk. This heart is built around string songs, tears, occasional joys, and their endearments. This heart is born to boogie beyond its melancholy. This heart is ready to stand in for another song. Every day, every day. Every day, it is finding home in calypso and kaleidoscope, constantly snatching words and their rhythm from the tongues of passers-by, stealing the laughter of lovers to make its own. This heart here is an instrument. It is learning the rhythm of the music, yearning to walk anew, to tie the shoelaces of time, to stand in the distance and look back, to allow itself to stroll and stroll and stroll around an entire sea to make amends, to beat its drum, to beat its drum, and 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 beat its drum, steady, steady. Thank you so much, Nicole. We do this because we are everyday people in the world, left behind, meet again, encounter new traces. We are every link in the chain of humane attempts. We are mahogany, peach, hazel, brown, coated, deep brown, green eyes, roots cross our faces. Tongues twitch in melodies like song harmonies. Tongues twitch, living life story, page by page by page. We are so similar, yet so strange. We meet in unfamiliar washrooms, on dance floors and battlefields. We meet by chance and grace the world. We create tomorrow's well-oiled pages. We are loud-faced and smooth hearted. Yeah, we are silenced by the cold, but we smile. Yes, we smile. to the corners of our eyes. Because we are everyday people in the world like Babo, Mohawk, Baganda, Banyayi, Maboche, Maori, and the sisters. We are so similar, yet so strange. Our bodies are constantly and similarly overflowing on the streets of life. Moving towards the wind, towards the waiting sun. We wait to capture yesteryears in our clenched fires, and when we get home, we tell her like she was laced with melodies from places we've been to. Because we are everyday people in the world. Like Babo, Mohawk, Baganda, Banyayi, Maboche, Maori, and its sisters, like Peotsangona, we are like Mobu, Le Seretse, Le Maibana. We, terra di mezzo, madre delle nostre civiltà. Perché in te ci incontriamo e da te partiamo.
Is there one more? Is there one more?
Like one more. Can't do that to the people. I'm not even waiting for you to ask. I think even if you were like, you know what? You want to get out of here. I'd be like, wait, just wait. This poem is going to take 1 minute. It won't bother your life. But it's something to take with you, it's something to think about. When I speak of war, I speak of war that happens obviously in different countries, and I am from all those countries, okay? And each one of them. I refuse to be from one country, never.
Hey.
I'm from all of them. But I also speak about the war that is currently taking place on women's bodies. And I urge every single man who is in this room to take the responsibility and to acknowledge that this is happening and this needs not happen. After the war, what do we do with the guns and the machetes? After the war, when the men and the boys return, when the men and the boys have fled, what do we do with the guns and the machetes? Do we toss them into the deepest of pits, never to see them surface again, or do we keep them intact, just in case? After the war, when the men and the boys are worn and torn and dead, what do we do with the guns and the machetes? Do we melt them onto our walls as amulets, or do we pass them on to the next buyer or stranger or even another brother, just in case we need another war after this one?
This is the time when anyone can ask a question, or the two of us can do that. You want to go?
Let's open it
Yeah,
up.
let's open it up wonderful people. We kind of prepared questions, but that's not fair.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ryan. You go.
There's one question in the back.
Oh, yeah. Hi. Say your name.
My name is Laura Mitchell. I'm
No.
a
Oh.
partner. And Natalia, I'm really curious to hear from you about language and writing. And are there topics that you are more comfortable in writing in English or in Sipedi or the other way around?
Thank you for the question. There are certain things that are not writable in English. And I appreciate that there are still things like that because I'm somewhat a hybrid who can't speak English properly, who can't speak my language properly. So I try to navigate between the two. And some of them will come to me in Sepedi. And my language is supposed to be Setswana. But I love Sepedi. The Mabedi people are so far removed from my people, but I don't concentrate on that. I'm a Pan-African, and I love language. I love languages from my continent, and I try to use them as much as possible. But yeah, English, I suppose, it's not my fault. It happens, and it happens to a lot of us. I hope have I answered you well?
Yes, thank
Or have I attempted?
you. Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? In the back, and then we'll come to you.
That was wonderful, by the way.
Thank you.
My question is around your black girlhood. Because I'm doing work with black girls in middle school. That's what my dissertation is about. And so I get curious when I hear from other folks who aren't necessarily, California or from the United States, just about black girlhood outside of this space. How did your black girlhood bring you to writing the way you do and connect with the words the way you do?
Because it's tough being a black girl in Johannesburg, sister. Ew. I think it's tough. Thanks for that question. I think it's tough being a black girl anyway. And then it's also tough being a black woman, a black mother. To have all these expectations on you, to not feel safe inside your home, inside your body, these things are real, people. And this is what black girlhood has meant to most of us. And we try to navigate them so that your children don't feel this. You don't want them. So there are ways, and God is good. And our ancestors too. Because we say God and ancestors at the same time. Who says we cannot? And that's how we can survive the dangers of being a black woman in this place called Earth. So yeah, I don't know if I'm answering you properly. How I got to write about it, I feel that I'm blessed because this is agency and currency, and I'm able to use that, and I'm grateful for that. I think some people will use photography, some people will use sculpture and painting, but I think art in general is a powerful tool. I wouldn't even think so much as weapon, but if it's a weapon, let's use it, but I see it more as a tool to take us out of victimhood, and then we can be able to survive, Yeah.
Good. One of the things that you have done is you were with Alice Walker, you were with Angela Davis, all those people when as young South Africans. Now this one, she called me grandma.
No way.
Yeah.
I call you sister.
No
What you
way.
talking
Yeah, you did say, let's not argue about that. She's young enough to call me grandma because she performs with my niece, Matimela.
Manaka.
Manaka, yeah, that's right. But I was trying to further say that when they were young, we thought we were doing the Black Power thing, you know. But part of our resistance, and Professor Lewis will say that when I was in Atlanta, which is almost 40 years ago, don't tell anybody, we had a little group of South Africans there, and we also thought we were super Black. So the relationship between the generations about Blackness, about femininity, about struggle, keep repeating in some ways. As you were saying, it is really wonderful when you're watching the people that are helping you take on the struggle further. So, yes. And this, by the way, is a South African flower.
Yay.
Did you know that?
Of course I did.
Your book was such the We Are compilation. It was such a window. It was such a window into a scene going on in South Africa, and I wanted to see if you could speak a little bit more about the poetry scene that's happening in South Africa and give us a little information on what's going on there.
There's a lot that is happening. Can everybody hear me? Okay.
I was trying. But I shall hold the microphone and say thank you for that question. The scene is growing. When we started, I mean, this thing, people have been doing it for 20 years, and some joined 15 years, and some joined 10 years ago, and it has given birth to a number of collectives that are strong, that have regular meetings. I'll make an example now. The Word and Sound Poetry and Music series. They have just collaborated with another team, a similar team, and they travel, you know, they do exchange programs where they are in Germany, and then the Germans come over to South Africa, etc. So yes, it has grown in a sense that the collectives help to attract young people who would not necessarily go into a poetry scene or to a poetry club. With a colleague of mine, a friend, Maisha Jenkins, she comes from Riverside, so I feel like I'm in her area. You know, we started what we call the Out There Sessions, Poetry and Jazz in Orbit, where we link it to jazz music, and people come and they, you know, they have dinner and conversations and listen to poetry and jazz. Even way before that, there was a collective called the Fila Sister Collective, where Lebogang Mashile, Napoma Shiane, Maisha Jenkins, and Nzigima Zwai had a particular or specific feminist agenda in their work, which was necessary, which what we needed. And they could speak about, remember, this is a country that has been free for just over 20 years. So it's got a particular position, it carries a particular position where every voice is necessary. And they created quite a big kind of space for women to go into poetry, to go into fiction writing, to go into writing, you know, where we needed Black girl narratives. And we wanted to listen and to read stories that reflected our lives too. So yes, that space is growing. And in relation to We Are, I was just writing, and I had my own poems, but I hold on too much to my poems before I let them out. I hold them. So another mentor, Professor Maurice Vambe, said, yeah, well, if you want to hold on to your poems, it's fine, but remember, we are free now, and there is space. And there is space for black women and for black youth to get their voices out there. So if you've got a few of your poems that are ready to be read by the world, ask all of the people that you know in the poetry scene to put them together so that, and then I thought, yes, a collection like that, an anthology, you're right, let's do it. And that's how We Are was born, because I felt that there was an opportunity that we can use to, and I felt it was actually much, much better than having just one person. I felt the community in there, which is what poetry is to me. Community, poetry is church, man.
Yeah. Okay. Did you still want to have? It was answered. Oh, okay. All right.
Hi. I met you earlier today.
Yes, I met you earlier today.
Hello, everyone. Professor, good to see everybody. My name is Molebatsi Scott. I'm actor, singer in the drama department, as well as musical theater. I wanted to know, this is just more of a practical question in terms of how your writing process, like what's your writing process like? Because I just noticed with your, the way you recited your poetry, it reminded me of like hip hop, and, I know as, fellow writers, songwriters, rap artists, whatever, we kind of feel the beat and then write that way. What's your writing process?
You've answered half of the question. I write to hip hop, particularly to hip hop beats, because hip hop beats are not just some new thing that comes from the USA. They can be traced way back to West Africa. It's true, and that beat is something of genetic memory that you guys kept here. So I write to that, and then I also write to jazz. There is nothing better than writing to Charlie Mingus. That is like it. But yeah, I write to hip hop and I write to jazz music, which is why I also experiment with both forms, and it might sound strange, but yeah, that's what I do. And then I also write to fiction. I write to Ngugi wa Thiong'o and I write to James Baldwin.
Comments?
You can take the questions.
So I'm going to take maybe like the chair's privilege.
Yeah.
Do you all have more questions?
No.
No. Okay. So I'm going to do a little bit of logistic stuff, but I'll do it after I do this. I'm going to ask us from UCI to welcome the Association for the Study of Black Women in Politics. So can you just repeat after me? We welcome you.
We welcome you.
We welcome you.
We welcome you.
We want you here.
We want you here.
Thank you for coming here.
Thank you for coming here.
Your presence is powerful for us.
Your presence is powerful for us.
We welcome you.
We welcome you.
Thank you, everybody.